be honest with one another. We've all had negative voices in our lives. Sometimes those voices have come from coworkers, sometimes friends. Sometimes those voices come from people that we love, our family, our support system. It is so crucial to understand at all times in your life, what voices are you giving energy? Now, as someone who has personally gone through a number of challenging issues in my own life, I know that we all can sometimes be that negative voice against ourselves. I've had those instances in my life where my own narrative about myself and my life and where I am wasn't necessarily the most positive, and the type of personal self-speak that I use with myself wasn't always positive. And I think what I've learned across time is this: you have always got to check on the voices that you're listening to and be very certain that you're not giving too much energy to negative voices. Now, there was a time in my career where I wanted to be a news anchor. I'll never forget it. I was in college, Journalism 101, University of Missouri, Columbia. In my J101 class, there were 600 students. 600 students filled an auditorium, all with the same aspirations of wanting to become a journalist. Now, I'd read magazines, I'd watched enough news reports, I'd practiced what I thought it took to be a great journalist. And there I was in my first course. Dr. Randley walked on the stage, and he looked out into the audience and said, "How many of you plan to be a journalist in your life?" Of course, we all raised our hands. Duh. We're here to be journalists. Teach us. The next thing he asked was, how many of you all want to be anchors, news anchors? How many of you all want to tell the news for the world news and world audience to see you? Every hand in the class went up. And it was as if in that moment I realized how self-speak and self-talk works. Now, little me on the inside felt so afraid that here I sat amongst my competition. And this wasn't all of my competition. This is just one journalism school in the world. Dr. Randley went on to say something shortly thereafter that really made me sit up in my seat. He asked the front row of students to stand up, and he went on to tell us all, the statistics show that these are the students, the number of students, that will actually go on to have successful careers in broadcast journalism. There were roughly 50 people sitting in the front row, and there I was, not amongst the people in the front row. And the negative self-talk began. I talked myself out of every opportunity to try to become a great journalist. And you better believe it, on one of my first exams, I got an F. I think that negative self-talk that I allowed to penetrate and permeate my thinking from hearing Dr. Randley's statistics, it really got to the core of who I was and what I believed I could do and be. Let's just say, fast forwarding, I dropped out of J school. I went on with my life, moved my academic career to the comm school, successfully graduated with my BA in communications, went on to work in radio and TV, just as I planned, but I didn't become that journalist that I know deep down inside I had the capability of being. I challenge you today to think in your life, where are the Dr. Randleys in your life? The people who don't know your capabilities, they don't know your strengths, but yet you've allowed their negative self-speak to talk to you. Well, this might make you cheer up. About 5 years ago, I reached out to Dr. Randley. I wanted to share with him that I actually had been a success. Perhaps not sitting in the front row of his class, but in my own personal life. And I talked to him over the phone for about 10 minutes, and we talked about life, and I shared with him my thanks and gratitude for him, sharing somewhat of a negative message. But now that I look back in hindsight, it's so important that you and I not give too much energy to negative voices. He was only doing his job that day and being realistic with us. But had I really stuck with it, I have no doubts that I would have become a great journalist. But guess what? My life isn't over, and neither is yours. And that's the way you've got to look at it. The story doesn't end because of one chapter. You've got to grab the pen and be your own author. So I encourage you today, really think about those voices that you listen to, and more importantly, that you give energy to. Number one, never doubt yourself. Number two, regardless of what the statistics are, you don't have to be a part of them. And number three, you're the author of your own story. Never give energy to those negative voices. Listen to your own capabilities and the possibilities that live within you. Until next time, reach out if you've got questions or if I can be of encouragement to you. Thanks again.